What's this? A ranger caught off his guard. The first line spoken by Arwen in Peter Jackson's film adaptation of The Fellowship of the Ring. Well, well, well. What do we have here then? Came a melodious female voice from behind him. A ranger caught with his guard down. The equivalent passage from the novelization by Ian Chesterfield, itself adapted from Jackson's film. These two lines offer us a focused lens through which to examine the expressive capacities of film and prose. The film version is concise and immediate. What's this? A ranger caught off his guard? This economy of language is typical of film, where time is limited, and visual cues do much of the narrative work. In contrast, the prose version expands on the moment, using descriptive language to build atmosphere, establish spatial orientation, and create a rhythm that suggests a character's demeanor. Prose allows for the gradual unfolding of mood and perspective in a way that invites the reader's imagination to fill in the rest. To further explore these differences, this video will look at one part of the story in both the film and the novelization of The Fellowship of the Ring. First, we'll watch a short clip from the film. Then, we'll read the matching chapter from the novelization. Since films move quickly and can show a lot in just a few minutes, while novels often take pages to describe the same events, we'll break the novelization chapters into short passages. After each passage, we'll stop to talk about what works well in the novel, what might be stronger in the film, and how each version tells the story in its own way. We'll go back and forth like this until we've worked through the whole chapter. At the end, we'll wrap everything up by thinking about what each medium does best, where they might struggle, and how comparing them helps us understand the story in a new way. By the time we're finished, we'll have a much clearer idea of how storytelling changes when it moves from screen to page, and why that matters. Let's begin.
Mr. Frodo? He's going cold! Is he going to die? He's passing into the Shadow Realm. He'll soon become a wraith like them. They're close. Sam, do you know the Athelas plant? Athelas? Kingsfoil. Kingsfoil, it's a weed. May help to slow the poison. Hurry.
What's this? A ranger caught off his guard? Frodo. Ima Arwen. Delima Shaik. Last Alamima. Galandungam Kalaku. Who is she? Frodo. She's an elf. He's fading. He's not going to last. We must get him to my father. I've been looking for you for 2 days. Where are you taking him? There are 5 wraiths behind you. Where the other 4 are, I do not know. What are they saying? Frodo I do not fear them. They sting. Owen. Ride hard. Don't look back. Naralin. What are you doing? Those wraiths are still out there.
Shelf. If you want him, come and claim him. Frodo! No! It's Frodo, don't give in! Not now! What grace is given me, let it pass to him. Let him be spared. Save him. Las da misma.
Next, we'll read the first passage from the chapter of the novelization, and then compare and analyze the differences. Miles away in the troll shores, Frodo lay beneath the twisted branches of ancient trees, his skin deathly pale, save for the blue-tinged edges of his wound. His breathing had grown shallow, each inhalation a visible struggle. "Is he dying?" Pippin whispered, voicing the fear that gripped them all. Strider knelt beside the stricken hobbit, checking the wound with grave concern. "Worse," he replied carefully. "He is passing into shadow. The blade was meant to break inside him. Even now its shard works its way toward his heart. Soon he will become a wraith himself." A chilling cry pierced the night air, the distant but unmistakable shriek of a ringwraith. Merry shuddered, instinctively moving closer to the fire. "They're getting nearer," he murmured. Frodo suddenly gasped, his back arching in pain as the poison pulsed through his system. Strider's expression hardened with decision. "Sam," he called urgently, "do you know the athelus plant?" The gardener's brow furrowed in confusion. "The what, sir?" "Kingsfoil," Strider clarified, using the common name. Recognition dawned on Sam's face.
Aye, that I do. Just a common weed, isn't it?
It may slow the poison's progress, Strider explained, already rising to his feet. We must find some quickly. Together they plunged into the darkness of the forest, eyes straining in the gloom for the small white flowers that might buy precious time for Frodo. Their torches cast dancing shadows among the ancient trees as they searched the forest floor. Finally, Strider's experienced eye caught sight of the plant he sought, delicate white blossoms nodding gently on slender stems. He sheathed his sword and dropped to one knee, carefully extracting the plant from the soil to preserve its healing properties. Suddenly, he felt the cold kiss of steel against his neck, and he froze in place.
Well, 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 what do we have here then?
Came a melodious female voice from behind him.
A ranger caught with his guard down.
Slowly, Strider turned his head to look up at his captor.
This passage from the novelization exemplifies many of the strengths inherent to prose as a storytelling medium, while also illuminating some of its limitations, especially in comparison to the film. Prose gives the writer freedom to delve into internal states, to shape tone with careful word choice, and to slow time for emphasis. That freedom is fully utilized here, especially in the intimate description of Frodo's deteriorating condition. The line, quote, "his skin deathly pale, save for the blue-tinged edges of his wound," end quote, is something the film attempted to show, but in prose it invites the reader to dwell on the visual, with the added weight of symbolic connotation. Blue edging toward the heart, life draining away. The tempo of the prose mirrors Frodo's own faltering breath, slow, measured, and ominous. Yet prose has constraints when compared to the visceral immediacy of film. The shriek of the ringwraith, described as a chilling cry that pierced the night air, must rely on a reader's imagination rather than sound design. Here, the dread is intellectualized and dependent on the reader's sensitivity to language and pacing. What prose does supremely well, though, is the expansion of time, the sudden escalation from Frodo's gasping pain to Strider's urgent command to seek Athalas. The sudden escalation unfolds over paragraphs, allowing the tension to simmer and the stakes to feel earned. Film is often locked to a faster rhythm, forced to show rather than tell, and bound by what can be visually or audibly conveyed. When Strider finds the plant and is suddenly threatened by a mysterious woman, the prose again uses its ability to withhold and surprise. The line, quote, "the cold kiss of steel against his neck," end quote, is a moment where language is both tactile and poetic, where pacing slows to a pinpoint of sensation. Let's continue.
Back in the clearing, Frodo drifted in and out of consciousness. Through the haze of poison and pain, he perceived a shimmering figure leap from horseback, a vision in white that seemed to glow with its own inner light. Was this death come to claim him? The figure knelt beside him, speaking words that seemed to float through the veil separating him from the world of the living. "Frodo," the voice called, musical and soothing, despite its urgency.
"I am Arwen. I have come to help you."
Her words shifted to Elvish, the ancient language washing over him like cool water.
"Hear my voice. Come back to the light."
Darkness claimed him once more as Frodo's eyes fluttered closed.
"Who is she?"
Pippin asked.
"She's an elf,"
came Sam's awed reply. When Frodo's awareness returned, the ethereal quality had diminished. The elven woman now appeared more substantial, her dark hair windblown, her riding clothes spattered with mud from hard travel. Her beauty remained, but it was the beauty of the earth rather than the stars.
"He's fading,"
she said, her voice tight with concern as she examined his wound.
"The poison works quickly. We must get him to my father."
Strider lifted Frodo, placing him upon the back of a magnificent white horse. The movement sent waves of agony through Frodo's body, though he no longer had the strength to cry out.
"I've been searching for you for 2 days,"
Arwen told Strider, their familiarity evident in the way they moved around each other.
"Where are you taking him?"
Pippin demanded, his small voice thick with worry. Arwen's gaze swept the darkened forest.
5 ringwraiths follow your trail. Where the other 4 may be, I cannot say."
Strider grasped her arm, speaking rapidly in Elvish.
"Stay with the hobbits. I'll send horses back for you."
Arwen shook her head, taking the reins of her mount.
"I'll take him,"
she replied in the same tongue.
"I'm the faster rider." "The road is too dangerous,"
Strider insisted, his hand tightening on hers.
"Frodo doesn't have long,"
she countered.
"If I can reach the river, the power of my people can save him." "What are they saying?"
Pippin whispered to Merry, but the elder hobbit could only shake his head in ignorance. Arwen's eyes held Strider's, a lifetime of meaning passing between them in that brief exchange.
"I do not fear them,"
she said simply. Something in her words seemed to reach him. With visible reluctance, Strider released her hand, stepping back as she mounted the horse behind Frodo's slumped form.
"Ride hard,"
he urged her.
"Don't look back."
She met his gaze once more, her face set with determination. Then, leaning close to her horse's ear, she whispered in Elvish,
"Run fast, Asphaloth, run fast."
The magnificent animal sprang forward, carrying its precious burden into the night.
"What are you doing?"
Sam cried.
"Those wraiths are still out there."
But the ranger remained silent, watching until horse and riders disappeared among the trees.
This passage benefits from the written word's ability to filter experience through Frodo's fragmented perspective. The world is blurred by poison and pain, and his first perception of Arwen is dreamlike, almost supernatural. In the film, this effect relied on lighting, costume, sound design, and cinematography to attempt to evoke that same mystical ambiguity. But prose gives us something more internalized and emotionally shaded. Frodo's sense of approaching death and his confusion between reality and dream are described with intimacy, allowing the reader to inhabit his disorientation. The language of the passage deepens the tone of reverence around Arwen's arrival. Her words are musical, her presence a balm even as Frodo nears unconsciousness. The use of Elvish here is especially suited to the novel form. It's described not just as a language, but as a sensory experience. Quote, "washing over him like cool water," end quote. This simile is not something the film could easily reproduce. The written word captures not just the external sound, but the internal reaction it provokes. That capacity to blend subjective perception with narrative action is a unique strength of prose. Still, this passage does brush up against some of prose's comparative weaknesses. The horse chase, for example, begins here with promise, but lacks the visceral dynamism of cinema. While the prose can describe motion, it does so abstractly. The physical thrill of Arwen's flight from the ringwraiths, which becomes a centerpiece in the film, is reduced to setup. Unless the following passages carry the chase forward with specific kinetic imagery, this is where prose must concede some ground. Motion, speed, and sustained visual spectacle are more naturally the domain of film. Let's continue.
For Frodo, the journey became a blur of pain and disjointed awareness. The rhythm of hoofbeats beneath him, the rush of wind past his face, the occasional jarring impact as the horse leapt some obstacle, all filtered through a haze of encroaching shadow. Sometimes he would surface briefly to consciousness, catching glimpses of the rising sun filtering through branches, or the broad backs of hills rolling past. Then darkness would claim him again, drawing him ever deeper into its cold embrace. As day broke over the Etten moors, Asphalot's white form emerged from the forest edge, galloping across open countryside. The morning sun cast long shadows behind them, but brought no warmth to Frodo's chilled flesh. Arwen urged her mount through a dense pine forest, the animal's breathing now laboured from hours of sustained speed. A sudden movement caught her attention, dark shapes emerging from the trees behind them. 2 ringwraiths had picked up their trail, their black steeds surging forward in pursuit. 2 more shadows materialized from different directions, converging on their position. Arwen leaned lower over her horse's neck, whispering encouragement as they burst from the tree line onto the open east road. The situation grew more dire with each passing moment. Ringwraiths appeared from all directions, 2 cresting a nearby hill, 3 more cutting across the fields to intercept them. All 9 of the Nazgul had joined the hunt, forming a closing circle of death around the elf and her hobbit. "Faster, Asphalot!" Arwen cried, her voice nearly lost in the thunder of hooves. Ahead lay their only hope, the ford of the River Brunnen, boundary of her father's realm. If they could cross those waters, they might yet find safety. Asphalot plunged into the shallow ford without hesitation, water spraying in silver arcs from his pounding hooves. Reaching the far bank, Arwen wheeled her mount around to face their pursuers. The ringwraiths had pulled up at the water's edge, their black steeds pawing nervously at the ground. Even in his delirium, Frodo could sense their hesitation. Something about the river posed a barrier they were reluctant to cross. The foremost among them, taller and more terrible than the rest, urged his mount forward a few paces.
"Surrender the halfling, she-elf,"
the Witch King commanded, his voice like the scraping of metal on stone. Arwen drew her sword, its polished blade catching the sunlight. "If you want him," she called in defiance, "come and claim him." With an angry shriek, the Witch King drew his own blade and led the ringwraiths into the ford. They advanced slowly, the water seeming to resist their passage, swirling around the legs of their horses in unusual patterns. Arwen waited until they had reached the midpoint of the crossing. Then, standing tall in her stirrups, she raised her arms and began to chant in ancient Elvish, an invocation of power that echoed across the valley. "Waters of the misty mountains, hear the word of power. Rise against the ringwraiths." The ground beneath them trembled. A distant roar grew steadily louder, coming from upstream. The ringwraiths turned their hooded heads toward the sound, their mounts whinnying in terror. A wall of water surged around the bend, not a natural flood, but a purposeful torrent shaped by elven magic. Within the foaming cascade, Frodo's fading vision could almost discern the forms of rearing horses, with manes of white water and eyes of fury. The ringwraiths shrieked as the flood engulfed them, sweeping their black forms away in its inexorable current. Their unearthly cries diminished as the waters carried them downstream, their threat temporarily scattered. Victory turned to desperation as Frodo slipped from the saddle, his strength finally spent. Arwen leapt down after him, gathering his small form in her arms. "No, Frodo!" she pleaded, feeling the life ebbing from him with each laboured breath. "Don't give in! Not now!" As consciousness abandoned him completely, Frodo heard her final desperate prayer, spoken with the intensity of one who channels all her being into a single purpose. "What grace is given me?
Let it pass to him. Let him be spared. Spare him.
Then there was only light, blinding, painful in its intensity. Frodo squeezed his eyes shut against the glare, but it penetrated even his closed lids. When he dared to look again, he perceived the stern face of an ageless elf, lips moving in arcane incantation, as the boundaries between dream, reality, and afterlife blurred into meaninglessness.
This concluding passage of the sequence is perhaps the richest yet in demonstrating the unique capabilities and intrinsic boundaries of prose when contrasted with film. Here, the medium allows for a layered interplay between sensory experience, poetic abstraction, and spiritual consequence. Frodo's ride becomes not just a physical escape, but an existential plunge toward death, and only prose can simultaneously follow his fading consciousness and describe the external action in such seamless tandem. The line, quote, "The rhythm of hoofbeats beneath him, the rush of wind past his face, all filtered through a haze of encroaching shadow," end quote, encapsulates the power of the written word to merge sensory detail with psychological dissolution. A film can show disorientation, but it cannot say what disorientation feels like with the same intimacy. Where prose perhaps falls short in comparison is in the action's immediacy. The pacing of the chase and flood, while emotionally charged, is still mediated through the slowness of language. Even short, punchy sentences cannot match the visceral acceleration of film editing, the sheer adrenaline of rapid cut pursuit. However, the closing image, Frodo engulfed in blinding light, greeted by the face of a healer in the liminal space between death and life, is pure prose magic. In the film, this was attempted via a carefully staged dream sequence that may have risked sentimentality or confusion, but in text, it can remain dreamlike and precise. The, quote, "boundaries between dream, reality, and afterlife blurred into meaninglessness," end quote. That final phrase encapsulates exactly what prose can do better than any other form. Blend metaphysical, emotional, and narrative layers into a single moment that defies literal framing. In summary, this chapter from the novelization reaffirms prose's strengths in depicting spiritual stakes, sensory disorientation, and symbolic resonance. It captures a chase not just through geography, but through the veil between life and death, balancing physical danger with emotional sacrifice. Where the film might have stirred our blood, prose stirs our soul. Both media tell the same story, but they reach different parts of the viewer or reader. In this case, the novelization doesn't merely mirror the film, it transcends it in depth, even if it cannot quite match its velocity. Thank you for watching this comparative analysis. Next time, we'll be comparing the scene where Frodo wakes up in Rivendell with the corresponding chapter in the novelization and analyzing the differences. Take care, and if you're listening to this, please send help.